What's going on, guys? Clone Force 23 here, coming at you with another planetary qualifier update, and I am proud to introduce Alec. How's it going?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great because
And we're
we,
back.
yeah, we're back. Um, Happy to boost Alec today because, in addition to our teammates finalists finalist in Alec also hit top 8 in that same Fargo PQ tournament and went undefeated in Swiss.
Woo! Ultimately, it didn't matter, but it was cool.
Fortunately, yeah. But I think this was arguably one of the strongest showings, especially when Swiss ends up being a dice roll. I think you and I have
Right.
talked about this a lot in this game. But the two things that are the most important that you can't control are one is what you draw, and two, who you get matched up against.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's where I've got a lot of respect for your run here. Um, but if nobody can see, what did you bring, Alec? What did you bring?
I brought my girl. I had to do it. I was originally thinking like, man, I'm just gonna bring Monohan because I've had a couple weeks practice prior to piling it in, and I'd probably say it is the better deck for sure. Just in terms of matchup strengths, it has a lot. Han has a lot better matchups into those late game control decks or 6+ resource leaders. But I just didn't feel comfortable yet with the bad matchups for Han and what my lines were. And I've been playing Sabine since set one, since the game came out. That's been my leader. She's the leader I brought to the first round of PQs here in Minnesota, and pretty much what I brought to any major tournament that I wanted to. And I was like, all right, instead of trying to just jam all of this knowledge of Han and force myself to try and like get stressed out about learning all these things. I'm just going to bring what I know and tweak it a little bit for this meta. And I hadn't really messed around with her at all for set three until 2 weeks before, and then I was kind of getting my feelers out, seeing what the deal was with her, and I ended up bringing this list. And yeah, I went to 6-0 in Swiss. It was super, super stressful. And like you said, you sit down, you can't control who sits down across from you. Um, I did have 6 different leaders that I sat down across from in Swiss. And so it was just like straight up just okay, like what am I dealing with right now? This is the thing. But
Yeah,
it was pretty like meta relevant stuff, I would say. So we'll get into that in a bit here. But yeah, overall, I felt like as even though we went to bed at 3 a.m. the night before and we're all figuring out what to do with our decks, I just felt like a lot of clarity with okay, this is what I should be doing, and if something was going wrong, I knew where my outs were and what I should be playing, and it worked out well for me in the Swiss pairings.
yeah. I mean, it looks like a really clean build. 3Os really tell you that like this works. We need this. Um, but there is a particular two of that I'd want to ask about. Someone who has no idea how to play this deck. Alliance Dispatcher. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Dispatcher made it into the list, and I love this card. I've loved this card since the game like came out in set one because in my like history of playing other card games, I'm a big fan of like ramp and getting big stuff out. I'm like, okay, a rebel that I can like ramp with. This card's gonna be great. And then like zero competitive play, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
had seen nothing. Um, and then the whoa, it was like the Thursday before the PQ. Um, I like came on to people playing Dispatcher, and I was like, all right, well, there's like always two flex spots in the Sabine turn one plays for the deck because Battlefield Marine, Green Squadron, and Sabine are always threes.
Mm-hmm.
And then R2 usually is in the list as a two or a three of, and then the last two are always like X-Wing or Rebel Pathfinder. And a lot of times it's really nice to have the ability to play a 2 and a 1 or like a 4 and a 1 or just to play off of the curve in the deck. And I didn't want to play Spec Force. I really just felt like that card doesn't do anything because you have to play it at the right time. It's kind of awkward. But yeah, some community members had been on Alliance Dispatcher and they're saying it was popping off. So Thursday night, I know we were testing it and it just, I think I resolved it like once or twice when we were all testing our team that night. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like playing a Poe on the Sabine flip turn or playing a Wrecker on 5 resources. Yeah, if you get to do the Alliance Dispatcher cheat out in an aggro deck, it's really easy also that turn to just be like slam the guy and claim. And then you get an attack off with the big guy. Funny enough, in the tournament, I didn't resolve his ability once.
No.
But I don't want to say that he did not do his job because the other thing that this card does is it draws the aggro. And that happened very often. Like a lot of times with Sabine, the new kind of play line is at some point between turn 1 and 3, you want to play 2 2-drops. And I'd usually do it turn 1, throw out something, and then turn 2, I'd slam like a R2 and a Battlefield Marine or any of the 2-drops. And a lot of times, if I open Dispatcher and R2, I'd get rid of the R2 and I'd slam the Dispatcher and one of the 2-drops. And Dispatcher ate like so many things that day. It drew so much fire to itself because everyone was like, okay, wait a minute, what's about to happen? Like Sabine's not generally on this card. And I mean, it ate like a takedown on the Sabine flip turn. It ate like a Kanan like attack into it, not ECL, just an attack. It just everyone needed to kill the Dispatcher. And what that does for us is, okay, you wasted, 1+ resource on a card that cost me 1 resource. And now I also get a bonus action before you take out another one of my guys. So it didn't resolve its effect, but it definitely did his job. I don't think there's a world where that card comes out for the rest of this set here, unless something drastically changes. I think I'm pretty locked in on this turn 1 play lineup. It felt amazing to me, and Dispatcher did a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, might as well have had Sentinel on there because people were just drawn to it. And
yeah,
I mean, if it were ever to happen, there is quite that punish. I think I recall you and I play testing, and there was a K2 that came out turn 2, and I was like, I should have done something about that. But
right.
We're here now.
It's like, what are they? Yeah, it's also just like this risk game. Like, okay, do I let the Sabine have that and hope that they have, something that they can play out, cheat out, like that? And the other nice thing is it is another 1-drop where the X-Wing and the Pathfinder are 2-drops. So against control, or just going wide in general, it's a lot easier to have 2 copies of 2 1-drops to assist in that play line.
Yeah. No, okay. So I got one more question before we get into your matchups here. Looking at the sideboard, makes sense, but a 3 of Ayla tells me that there's something very specific that you want to see to bring that in.
Yeah, so the 3 of Ayla was, honestly, the side deck has 7 cards dedicated to blue villain control.
Yeah.
And that's the double wolf, the double fang fighter, and 3 Ayla. So we have like quite a few answers to Child Sin on the flip turn. We have any of our 3 power units plus Darksaber. We have, Poe that can go into it on the 5 turn, but then Poe's probably dying. And so this card people have been on because, one, we can remove Childson, and if we have Coordinate up, which we most likely do if the Childson playline is the way that they're going, especially in like Blue Bosk, that's kind of the standout blue villain control right now. Against us, their turn 1 is usually Claim, their turn 2 is Power of the Dark Side, and then their turn 3 is they throw out a 6/6 Childson. So that's 1 removal spell in the time that they have played their Sentinel. And so if we do the play line of jamming 2 units on 1 turn and then just flip Sabine and leave her there, we will guaranteed have at least 2 other units alive on the 5 resource turn, so we can just jam Ayla into the Childson, even if Childson takes out one of our units.
Okay.
And that happened. The other thing it does is it takes out Bosk without taking any damage. That also happened during the Swiss pairings. And then I did board it in against a Cad Tarkin town just due to Zuckuss. If Zuckuss ever came out and he was unanswered, I wanted to have a way to kill him without like losing my Poe to that. And so that's what I brought her in for. That ended up not happening. So I don't know if I'd like necessarily bring it in again, but yeah, I feel like Ayla performed super well. Like I was pretty impressed with like, okay, this is the Coordinate isn't as hard to get going if you're kind of planning for that play line.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean it's also pretty big body turn 5.
Right.
That just again, with Sabine's playstyle sometimes it's like, I got a unit, I got, you claim the initiative, you deal damage with that unit, then I can remove it. You kind of, if you end up in that back and forth volley, you can feel really bad going up against a deck like that. And this is just another unit that just makes that an awful experience. For the other person. But let's get into the pairings. I think it's wild that you had 6 different leaders. 6 different decks, leaders. Basically.
Yeah, 6 different decks. So yeah, we can get into it here. So my round 1 was Thrawn Blue. And I sat down across from him, round 1, everyone's kind of hyped up. And I'm like, okay, this is like the worst version of Bosk Blue is what I felt like. I was like, I don't feel like this is going to be kind of a hard matchup for me. And he threw out, I think, a Pike Sentinel on turn 1. He had initiative for game 1. And then proceeded to Frozen and Carbonite, my first 2 plays. I was like, okay, yeah, that's going to be a problem. At some point, I drew the Poe, and I was like, all right, I can ditch one of these Carbonites to like free one of my guys. I think it was a Cassian and a K2 that were under the Carbonites. Okay. And he just kind of like didn't throw out a guy to play. I ended up just like playing Poe on 5 resources. I didn't have anything to throw it into. And then I think he just got hit with Fell the Dragon. And then I was just kind of left to Dirtle. I did get to resolve ECL Wrecker, though. And then at some point later in the game, I came back with that game. And I was like, that's why we always play out your games. You know what I mean? Like in a PQ setting, hey, things can happen. People can draw bad because at some point I got a Fighters for Freedom out there. And he played Power of the Dark Side. And I just got rid of my guy that had the Carbonite on it. So that was like, all right, that's fine with me. And then he threw out a Childson, and it was like a 5/5. And then I was able to throw a Darksaber on my Fighters for Freedom. And he was like, claim. And I'm like, all right, 7 to base. And he's like, he's got Sentinel. And I'm like, yeah, he has Saboteur, though. And he was like, oh, gosh, like, totally forgot. So it's again, just play it out. People forget to read cards, and that like 7 damage was just too much for him to come back from. So game 1 was good, and then game 2 was kind of a stomp. It was just typical Sabine. Like he had to take down. I think I threw out a Cass again on turn 2, and he used a takedown on the flip turn on that. Threw a Darksaber on Sabine, and it was just kind of over from that. I was like, all right, I'm just punching the damage. So it was a fun match, though. It was a really good game. Honestly, all of my games in Swiss, I felt like were super good, super competitive, like playing at a very high level. So that I was really happy about that, to have really skilled opponents. So my round 1, I beat Thrawn Blue 2-0. My round 2, I sat down across from Cad Tarkentown, and I was like, man, this is how it's going to go today, huh? Like, play Blue Villain Control into Cad Bane Tarkentown. And I knew that this is like a very bad matchup for me. He took the first game, and game 2, I think it was just trading stuff back and forth. And game 3, he missed his turn 1 play. So that was huge, because in the first 2 games, he Tarkentown my turn 1 play. Like the same exact way. He played a Crafty Smuggler, pinged it, Tarkentowned it. And there was just no use in doing this passing back and forth, waiting for him to do something deal. It was just like, all right, kill my first guy and let's see if I can come back. The 2 relevant things in that matchup is on 4, they usually throw out Forlom and kill something. And I ECL'd K2 into Forlom 2 of the games, because I could not allow Zuckuss to get ambushed out as a 7/7 the next turn. It was like, I just can't let this happen. So yeah. I have to burn my ECL. I have to lose my K2, but at least I'm dealing damage. The other really relevant card in that matchup was Sundari Peacekeeper, just slamming down a 5 HP unit that restores 2. I think in game 3 I had 2 of them out, and it was brutal. I was restoring 4 each turn. He had to waste a bunch of resources to even kill it. So yeah, Sundari was huge in that matchup, and then just removing the Forlom when you know you have to. I think the only thing I sided in was the Daring Raids into game 2 and the Ayla, and I think I took Ayla out for game 3, because I was like, I'm just never going to allow Forlom to be out there, so I don't need this Ayla in the board. So I won that one 2-1. Round 3 was the mirror, faced a Sabine ECL. That was literally like 2 damage off from game, both of the games. I did win that 2-0, and that was one of the games where Alliance Dispatcher got like completely eaten by something, but I was like, oh man, my aggro mirror is wasting an attack to kill my Alliance Dispatcher. Yeah, that's like huge for me. It was huge. And I know game 2, I think he opened with Sabine unit, and I opened with Battlefield Marine, and I ECL'd the Sabine unit, or my Marine into the Sabine unit, so that he didn't live. Like the Sabine died, and then my guy was still living. And I was like, I never open Sabine unit in the mirror if I have to, because that play is such a crutch. And I don't think he kept the right 3-drop, because I always keep a 3-drop that's not Fleet or Wing Leader in case that happens, because his turn 2 play was another Battlefield Marine. And I was like, oh, so you probably kept Wing Leader Fleet thinking his guy would be alive. And I'm like, no, not going to let that happen. And then I think I got Darksaber Sabine in that game, and it was just like, yeah, typical stuff. So I won that one 2-0. My round 4 was my friendly fire match against Cody, who went to the finals, so that was great. And actually, I think me being one of his losses in Swiss actually like shot him up huge, because I was the only undefeated player coming out of Swiss. So I did win that 1-2-0. That game was on stream over at the Jodo Cast YouTube channel. But yeah, that was kind of typical Hero Blue control stuff. The game too, he did open with Green Squadron. And I had to ECL my Green Squadron into his because that was my only play. And I was like, all right, I'm burning ECL on turn one against Blue Hero. Like, hopefully I don't lose.
Yeah.
But I was able to pinch it out, like super close at the end of game two. But
What's
that
the
made it.
what's the particular logic of that? Because it was only your turn one play. Is that just to maintain board control?
Yeah, just so that, because like if he had initiative, so he threw out his, and I was like, this is all I have. So if I just throw it out, he's just gonna throw his into mine and kill it and live because it only has one attack. So I was like, I'm just like throwing away a unit at that point, so I might as well just try and turn this into an advantage. And he ended up like not drawing his Concord Dawn until like 2 turns later or something. So I definitely did not like that, but I think that was my mulligan was into that was my only turn one play. So no lane dodging available. I just had to take that out, but it ended up working. So that was good to have that work out. Yeah, the Sabine unit in the A wing is just so scary if they have initiative and they have one of those, because you have to use your ECL. Like you have to waste it or else your turn one's dying.
Sure.
So that was the logic with that. It worked out. So 2-0, my round 4 was Anakin Blue. Round 5 was Quinlan Tarkentown. I'm just like going through the list of like the decks that just
what's being played at a PQ. You played it.
Yeah. So round 5 was Quinlan Tarkentown. Again, I'm just going into this being like, oh my gosh, this is not going to be good. That one was a 2-0 as well. And the big thing that happened in that match was game 1 was kind of typical Sabine stuff. And then game 2, on the 5 resource turn, I think I had an R2 and 2 wreckers in hand. And I ended up not playing something on the 5 resource turn. I had no Casses in my resource row, and I had like a good chunk of damage on him, like a huge amount, like almost within game. I think he was at 19 damage. And I was like, if he force throws the only wrecker out of my hand, I'm screwed. Like that was my win con. I hadn't used ECL. My board was basically cleared. And so I actually resourced the R2 and I kept both the wreckers. And he did force throw. And I threw one of the wreckers and he's like, oh crap. He's like, why would you ever throw a wrecker unless you had another one? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, claim it. He had 2 left up, and I'm like, if you have a Spark the Rebellion, you got it. He's like, I don't have another discard. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, there we go. So I was able to ECL wrecker for game 2, but that was a fun matchup. It was just a case of, hey, if you have it, you have it. And I had the 2. That was like the big brain play of that. Was like, all right, I'm going to have to keep these 2 wreckers and not do anything on 5 resource because there's no restore in that deck. So I didn't need to worry about that. So that felt good to kind of pay off on my instinct, just being like, do nothing, take it slow, like play to your win con. And that was really nice. So that was round 5, and that was a 2-0. And round 6, if I thought all my matchups were bad going into this, man, did I hate sitting across from Bosk Blue on round 6. So
especially the end of the day.
And especially being like, okay, I'm 5-0. I'd really like to be undefeated in Swiss. And because of pairings, the person who was in second technically in Swiss got paired down last round. And so like I was playing against someone who was 4-1, or he was, he was
right.
4-1. Yeah, he was 4-1 because if he lost, he would be 4-2. So he might not make it. So I got paired down, and I was like, okay, so if I win this, I will be the only undefeated player in Swiss, and I really wanted that title, but I hate Bosk Blue. Mm-hmm. So I was like, game one against Bosk Blue is just always a loss because I have 7 cards in my side deck, which means 7 cards in my main deck I don't feel like are great. So game one, yeah, was just a loss. I think I scooped on like 6 resources. I'm like, yeah, let's go to game two. And game two was a little bit of a grind, but I think I saw one Fang Fighter and one Ayla in game two. The Fang Fighter removed a top target from turn one, and then the Ayla removed Bosk. He wasn't able to do the Childs and stuff. So that was game two. And then game three was like unbelievable, like the best draws I drew all day.
Mm-hmm.
I drew like 2 Wolves, a Fang Fighter, and 2 Aylas. I was like, I'm locked in. Like, I've got this match. I think on the 6 resource turn, because on 5, I had like a K2, a Battlefield Marine with a top target on it, Sabine out, and something else. And he killed something with Bosk. And then on the 5 resource, I ECL'd Ayla into Bosk and killed him. So then he claimed. And on 6, I think he vigilanced and got rid of one of my guys and then like healed 5. And the Battlefield Marine had 2 damage on it. And so he was 1 ping away from healing again. And then I just slapped down Wolf. I was like, no healing this turn. And he was like, oh crap. And I had a K2, a Sabine, a Ayla Sakura, and a Battlefield Marine standing. And he was like, I think he open fired my Sabine. And then I slapped a Darksaber on Ayla Sakura.
Oh.
And I was like, good game, man. And it was just like boom, boom, boom. It like 20 damage in a turn. It felt so good. It was just like insane side deck presence in that match. So I won that one 2-1, and that was the final round in Swiss. So yeah, I was the only undefeated in the Swiss, the only 6-0 player, which felt great. But because of all of the weird people getting paired up and paired down, unfortunately for me, fortunate for this guy, the Bosk Blue player was the last 4-2 to make it into the top cut. Mm-hmm. And so because he was last and I was first, we had to play each other in the first round of top cut. And I just got stomped. Like, did not draw any of my side deck cards. I lost the first game. Like I said, it's just always a loss against Bosk Blue. And then game 2, I didn't see anything. None of my side deck cards. I think I saw Ayla, but it was like on 8 resources. It just didn't matter at that point. And I think I got him to like 24 at some point, and then he just started healing a million every turn. I wasn't able to come back from it. So unfortunate to end it there, especially against that matchup. But yeah, it was still nice. It was still fun to make it there and be like, all right, I can take this deck and, do good stuff. Like we said, you just got to draw the cards, and I didn't draw the cards. So it was fun matchup nonetheless. But yeah, the deck overall, I mean, I loved it. I loved like everything that I had selected for the deck. Notably, I didn't face any Djangos. That was the other thing I was terrified of, was flying into a Django. So Bright Hope literally did not get played all day because that's what it's there for. Yeah, I was like, all right, well, if I dodge Django, I guess I don't need Bright Hope in the main, but it is super like relevant in that matchup. So probably got to stay in there in the board somehow.
No, I mean, it's the chances of, all those decks and not Django's, it's crazy. And it was, Django was very present
There's a lot, yeah.
So it was surprising that that's just where it didn't happen. But the one Bosk Blue that showed up, they had to be in the lineup.
Had to be.
2 that I saw that day. But still, it's, again, what you line up against.
Right.
But, an unreal Swiss showing. I think what makes it notable is that, talking to some other people that were there, they were like, yeah, played a lot of Django's, and I was ready for it, and I got locked in against it. It was like that opportunity wasn't there to be like, yep, I know what to do against this line. I've practiced this all day, and I can do it again. It was like, nope. It was a new strategy. It was a new win con every game.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, for sure.
impressive there, and it's like, you know, and you know, I know that you said it's important to play out your matches, but I agree with you. Just scoop against Blue Bosk if you get to certain resources.
Yes, some of them you're just like you're losing, so you don't need to play it out at that point.
Well, unfortunately, it's the right move because if it's that's the game that's going to get you to time, and you don't want to take a double loss in Swiss because that's just really,
yeah,
really complicated there. But so we talked about Dispatcher. That's crazy. But is there any other surprising standouts from your list?
Sundari put in work a lot. I think I know I played two in the CAD. I know I played one in the Sabine mirror. I know I played one in the Quinlan. But Sundari Peacekeeper in the main deck is like that's staying in the main deck.
Mm-hmm.
I did also like buff it once with a Darksaber on Sabine, and that was just like, oh my gosh, how they can't kill this. Like the aggro mirror cannot kill this card.
Yeah.
And the other thing it gives Sabine is it gives us another 3-cost 5 health unit. So like if our turn 1 play gets taken out and we're holding Fleet and then one of the 3/5s, or I guess Sundari's a 1/5, but it has Ray too.
Sure.
It gives us that 5. And I didn't think that was like that strong. Like I knew Cass was strong, but I'm like, is it really like that hard to remove a 5 power off turn 2 if they remove my turn 1 play? But it is. Like it was very hard for people to remove that card. They had to send 2+ units into it or a removal spell. And it feels great if they're using a removal spell on a 1/5, you know. Sundari felt great. Red 3 felt god awful all day. I am like,
okay.
I don't think I played Red 3 once. That card has been kind of the card that the Sabine community is like, do we even need this? I mean, it comes up every so often where those pings are just that extra 1 is relevant. But especially in like Django, and because of Django, there's a lot of space answers in every deck. It's just feels so bad to throw out a 2/3 on turn 2 when I could play, a 3/5 or a 1/5 with Restore 2 and Raid 2. So yeah, I'm trying to think of it if I ever even popped out Red 3. I might not have. And then Darksaber just felt like a win more situation, and I know a lot of the upgrades feel like that. Jedi Lightsaber, Fallen Lightsaber, all those cards. But I do not be afraid to resource this card. If you're the Sabine player, it is literally just there as a punish if they're tapped out and you can do something with it. The times I did play it, it was kind of like game because I played it, but a lot of times it was like this is getting resourced for sure, as opposed to something else. So yeah, it's tough. I'm testing with something else right now. We got a little hot tech going on in the saber realm.
Okay.
But yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's necessary. There's definitely lists that are just running General Dodonna in that slot instead of Darksaber, and that's fine too. There are times for sure where I was like, I wish I had General Dodonna because that's a lot more relevant than buffing one thing that can get hit by Fell the Dragon. It really felt like it just needed to go on Sabine. That was the other thing. It's like, okay, this just goes on Sabine because no removal spell, right, other than Rival's Fall. So that was the tough spot where I could have thrown it on a lot of stuff pretty often, but they probably just get hit with Fell the Dragon. So
sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'd say like Red 3, Darksaber underperform, Dispatcher, Sundari overperform.
I mean, it's pretty interesting. Um, yeah, so a couple thoughts on edits there. If you were to play it again, might not. Probably talk about that in another video coming in this week.
Oh, maybe.
Or maybe you got some thoughts. But but yeah, that's. I mean, it's kind of the old guard in terms of the competitive decks, but clearly proven that this is still extremely viable in the current game state when a lot of decks are just trying to race to base, and
Right.
she invented it, so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, um,
Yeah, and I didn't even feel like people were not ready for it. I mean, I sat across from a lot of people. They're like, "All right, Sabine." I'm like,
mm-hmm.
"Yeah, sorry, that's what I'm playing." And it, yeah, it's
Hey,
like people know how to counter it, but it's just so versatile because like all my cards do the same thing, and it's they deal damage. So that's what's kind of hard about how the deck is evolving.
mm-hmm.
Kind of less that rebel synergy, more so that hey, these cards just do damage, and they're getting harder to remove. Um, I will say like Wrecker was my win con like 95% of the games that I played. For Cause is like second on the win con list. It's like Wrecker. That card is broken. Like if there's anything that I would turn into a legendary, it is Wrecker. That card is
Yeah, I
absurd.
don't know how. Yeah, it's but just one of the greatest rares out there, I guess.
Yeah, might be the greatest to
Might
be
be
honest.
arguably the greatest.
Arguably the greatest rare.
Mhm. Um, well, all right. I mean, you know, I keep this deck in mind if anybody's watching and trying to get ready for the next round of PQs. I know Alec, you'll be at the next one here in Minnesota. Um,
Yep.
you know, will you play it? I don't know. Might have to watch the next video to talk about that. But
There
if
might
you're
be
looking
some new hotness coming in
some new
with
hotness
Sabine.
coming in. Yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to get that, if you're trying to get that free day to yourself in Vegas before you have to play some Star Wars, this might be the deck for you. Um, but yeah, let us know your thoughts on this. Big congratulations to Alec on his PQ run. If this is your first one, I'm very excited for the other two because you're just warming up. Um,
Right.
if you like our content, feel free to subscribe, like, hit the notification bell if you want to see our next video. We're going to try to get a couple out here before the next PQ, and we'll just try to keep sending out the updates on what we're doing. But um, hopefully, we'll be able to give out some more good news in the coming weeks. But with that, Clone Force 23, and we'll peace out.
Peace.
Grand Army of the Republic when deployed. Galactic warfare you cannot avoid. Go ahead, be a battle droid. Face off against my clone troopers and get destroyed. Space tech, spaceports, TCG, card sports, of course. Till my voice goes hoarse. Welcome, wrecking, decking with the strategy, the energy. It's Clone Force 23.